Well, special meeting with Board of Ed. It's the pledge of allegiance. The pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
And to the republic for which it stands.
One nation under God and indivisible with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda is public comment on it's related, can only be related to the budget. Okay. First item is to approve the agenda. I have a motion.
So moved.
Second, any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. First is public comment. A person here want to talk again. It's only about the budget, not about school name or anything like that right now. It's just about the budget.
I'll just make some
Just state
observations.
your name and everything.
Elizabeth Shouty, Durham. Basically, I didn't feel there was any big thing other than the naming of the school issue, which I totally had many opportunities to vote. So I felt that that was well covered. I chose not to vote, so I don't feel I have a say in the rest of it. I did see there was quite a bit of chatter about the ABA position. I think that is still not understood by the general public, that it's not going to hurt them. I am a big proponent of certified, trained staff as the transition coordinator here for 20 years. I could not have done my job without ABA. However, I understand that staff is different now and doesn't have the same ABA. So this 10-year plan sounds very intriguing to me, and I feel that was good, but I don't feel people understood the change. They felt it was threatening the jobs of staff. Other than that, I know a number of people that said either I forgot or I didn't realize it was that day, and there wasn't a lot of posts. I did put one out like on Sunday in various groups reminding people to vote, but I just feel like people forgot. There was not one thing like, oh, it's just too high, I'm voting no, no matter what. I know I've had some of our elderly people in the community comment that they're gonna vote, but they're gonna vote no, no matter what. So we just need to figure out how to reach our parents better and get them to vote. That's I did not hear of big issues, and I personally did not have any.
Thank you. Anyone else? Eileen?
I'm like always a token public commenter.
No.
I mean, I'm just here to, because we're supposed to set the mill rate tomorrow, so I just
Yeah.
wanted to hear what you're gonna do.
Good idea. Anybody else about the budget? Online?
Anyone online who'd like to speak, please raise your hand. Seeing none.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is discussion of the referendum results from May 5th. I think it kind of seemed like the normal Durham votes positive and Middlefield kind of votes negative sometimes. Except this was pretty much overwhelming from negative from Middlefield this year. But I really can't, we have very little information on why the people voted the way they did. We had a group of people say they're gonna vote no because of the name, which really isn't a budget issue, but it was there. We had some that were opposed to the position of library media specialist. We had information that from the finance committee and referring to Eileen mostly, and and then we had a little bit of comment on the ABA, which we never really got back to us. We just kind of heard about it. We didn't have much in the way of feedback. Since it failed, we have some feedback indicating, they want to have a reduction in coaches, instructional coaches. And, that's about all I've really heard. I don't know, I think I agree with Eileen that, you know, Elizabeth, that there's very little feedback on what was going on. So I don't know, anybody else have any ideas of what's happening?
Linda has her hand up.
Linda? Linda, you can talk,
Doctor,
it must be,
She's just working on unmuting.
Oh, I'm on my phone. I don't know how to unmute on my phone. All right, I apologize. So what I want to say is that, you know, I had said as we were crafting the budget, I had said, you know, I wanted to keep in the library position and the curriculum lead position, and saying if the town doesn't want it, then or towns don't want it, and let them plus. And so I think Middlefield especially did. So I am, you know, and we've had some you know, conversations about what comes next. And so I just want to validate that this is how it's supposed to work. You know, am I disappointed? I'm not, well, I guess I am disappointed that it didn't pass. But that's how this system is supposed to work. What I would invite and entreat people to do is please reach out to your reps during the budget process, because then we can avoid going out and back and out and back. But again, I respect the process. I respect the voice that Middlefield came with, and we will adjust. And I do want to invite people to, you know, reach out during the budget process. And I know it's hard. It's online. Just, I promise I won't go grammar. But just reach out, and I would love to hear from you rather than hearing from other people that they heard other people say. I really want to know from the people in Middlefield what's happening. And so I do appreciate anyone who emails, anyone who calls. Those are the official channels that we can take into consideration. So that is all.
I would echo those comments of that. It is, I mean, look at how many people showed up for public hearing, and remember, you know, we do have a lot of meetings, and I totally understand that meetings are very challenging to attend or make, but really just write a quick email of like any feedback, because like if we don't know, we can't just, you know, I learned at my very first job, assume nothing, check everything. It said it everywhere, all over the walls. So, you know, we don't want to assume what this, you know, community is thinking. So it's very helpful to have feedback. I was actually really surprised that like last minute there was like lots of talking about the ABA, because the way it was implied, then like literally like the day before the vote, people were reaching out to me saying like, oh, they're cutting services. And I'm like, no, there's no services being cut for ABA. It's just a change in like how we're staffed. You know?
Yeah.
So I don't know if we want to talk about that for like a hot minute.
It's a probably good time for me to clarify. So the change with the ABA is that what we're reducing is paid vacation. So they were 12-month employees with paid vacation, and now they are going to be 10-month employees, similar to our teacher assistants. The ABAs were scheduled over the summer for, you know, sometimes the several weeks where there were no students here, and in tight budget times, that's just something that we can't continue doing. We love our ABAs. They are invaluable. There are absolutely no services being cut to students whatsoever. It really is just kind of a tightening up of our staffing model.
and just for the summer, we're then.
Just, but a lot of, I think maybe all, but at least a lot of our ABAs will be working over the summer for extended school year. It's just that they get a separate contract for that.
I think timing is really everything with these things. I mean, it's a scary time right now. People are paying more money for gasoline, as we well know. In Middlefield, we see big buildings going up, and immediately the perception is it's gonna cost more money. We did what we did because we needed a line. That's why we did what we did. But because Middlefield had such a wonderful run with very no increases whatsoever for a long time, it allowed a lot of older people to continue living in the town they love. I just look back when my mother was there and she was scared times when taxes were gonna go up, when their perception was such. So I think that's part of it. I would not wish anybody's grandparent to be moving out of town because of taxation. So I think, yeah, the timing is difficult with everything getting quite expensive, as we well know. Just have to find a happy medium between, satisfying the parents with quality of education. That's our job. And also not kicking our elderly neighbors out of town.
Lucy has her hand up.
Huh?
Lucy has her hand up.
Lucy, go ahead.
Trying to get all the pieces together here. As far as not hearing from people, yes, we did not hear any comments from our finance committee, from the community during our public hearing. We did recently hear from Bob Yarmartino, the first selectman in Middlefield, that he had spoken to some people. And I had reached out to someone I know in Middlefield, and she responded back to me. And it just seemed like the overwhelming issue was just the amount of the increase in the budget. That's what I heard from the person that I directly heard from, and that's what I'm hearing from Bob, who supposedly spoke to a number of people from his office. That being said, I know some suggestions were made, and I know instructional coaches have come out before, and I kind of looked at our list, and I mean, that's something we've sort of talked about, but not really. We have approximately 5.6 instructional coaches. I think one of the positions is split among different schools. And the other thing is, I was also looking at the most recent employment information that Kevin Bro sent out. And in that information, we have 6 staff members who are going for their 6th year. And I don't know how many staff members we have overall who do have their 6th year, but I think we have quite a few staff. We have very experienced staff. And we've had coaches now for several years. And I'm just wondering if that isn't something that should seriously be looked at. Not the interventionists, because they work directly with children, although we also, need to make sure that there's enough children to work with. But I think we should be looking at the coaches. And then I have a question. What are tutors? What's the difference between tutors and instructional specialists and the coaches?
You want to take that one, Kevin? or me?
Yeah, so Lucy, tutors are part-time. They work a very limited number of hours. They provide support primarily on an individual basis with students, but that's a major difference, that they are part-time. Our tutors have bachelor's degrees and are very highly qualified. So this is just another avenue by which we can provide support to students.
Okay, so are they also salaried along the teacher salary as part of the union?
They are hourly employees, Lucy.
Okay. The interventionists go by contract. So we actually have 13 and a half staff members that work with students. And I never have a problem working directly with students. That's what we're here for. But I think we really need to look into the number of coaches that we have and the expertise that we have among our staff and see if we could make it's there.
There's not a direct correlation between instructional coaches and the expertise of staff. So, that's one thing, but I've been pretty open about the fact that I would recommend the reduction of a coach when we consolidate into the next school, but next year is not the right time to do it. But I know Nick and Linda both have their hands up.
Nick?
Hi. Yeah, so I just wanted to share that I looked over the voting data for the last decade or so of budget proposals. There's only been one rejection, and typically the second go around has even worse voter turnout. So it's not really something I'm seeing by looking at the numbers that the result we have here is because of poor voter turnout. The numbers are pretty similar to other years. I think it truly is just a rejection of the budget. I think the difference between yes and no on Middlefield's end is actually the historically largest it's ever been. So um, I think when we passed the budget, I was also in the same camp that Linda was in, with, let's put it to the towns, see how they feel about the headcount we're adding. It'd be nice if we get it, but if we don't, then I think that's the first place we have to look.
Thanks, then.
Linda, you had another question?
Yeah, Jess, I was one piece was I was going to actually say something very similar to Sydney, which is people who are in their 6th year or getting their 6th year. It is rarely in instruction, right? That's a higher level degree that generally doesn't have a lot to do with instructional. Well, it can involve instructional practice, but it's usually like a higher level, not right there on the ground. And as I've said since I've gotten here, that the instructional coaches are the linchpin to improving tier 1, which will then impact the number of students requiring intervention. So it is impossible in this day and age of AI, phones, new science of reading. There's new assessment coming down the pike. There's new, there's new teacher indoctrination, onboarding coming down the pike. There's a new math thing that's just hitting the state. All of those, our teachers don't have the time to sit and ponder and weigh the choices here and there. And that's why the instructional coaches are so important, because they get to learn about these new pieces of whether it's a mandate or just best practices, and then turnkey that for our teachers who are in the battlefield on a daily basis. So the first time I got involved in the board was years ago when some of you may be the same, were looking to get rid of the coaches, and I came out in support of them, and I will continue to support them because they are the key to good instruction in tier 1 for all of our kids.
So I don't know if Lucy was done either. Lucy, were you finished?
Christine?
So if we remove the library media specialist, what does that bring the budget down to?
So the leadership team met, it's just, again, we didn't have a ton of information about the why, but the leadership team met last week and we wanted to bring forward 2 potential reductions. As much as it pains me to say it, the library media specialist would wait another year. And then we also could propose a reduction of $100,000 in capital. The risk there, just to let you know, is just that Brewster and Lyman need to hang on 1 more year with their boilers and their roofs. That could be if there's some kind of an emergency that's needed. But with the reduction of those 2 things, we would get it to under 4. And I'll hand it over to Kim in a minute. And I know that we had heard from Eileen at one point that under 4 might be a lot more palatable. And then the other aspect of this is that just last week we did receive money from the state that wasn't anticipated. And because of that, it will, like, prior to receiving those funds, our net was higher than our gross. After putting those numbers in of what we'll actually get, we would be below 4 for our gross budget increase, and our net would be lower than our gross. So those 2 things work in our favor, and Kim can explain the actual numbers.
So I had originally, when we had the district meeting, we had shown that as ECS funds. So would not reduce the net budget increase for the district because those funds flow directly to the towns. But they're coming from two different pots that are not UCS funds, and the legislature, we spoke to our attorney this morning too, very careful to not call it ECS, because what that does is that makes it an MBR thing. So that makes it the next year, you've got to meet that amount. So they said, be very careful, don't call it ECS. So what that means is, and it's a grant to the district. So the towns can, if the towns have not passed their budget yet, they must pass it on. It's educational money, right? It can't be spent somewhere else. So he suggested that we show that as a grant, as opposed to money going directly to the towns. So with that case, that's $215,000 between Middlefield and Durham of additional funds. This is not more money than we talked about at the district meeting, same pot of money, but the presentation of it is different. And by that means that our net budget will reduce down to below our gross. So if we are at, I don't know if you want to just talk any figures.
With those two things, with the capital and the library media specialist.
So with the reduction of those two, our gross budget would be a 3.93, and our net budget would be a 3.75. Keep in mind, you vote on the gross. The public votes on the gross number.
Can I just ask, so I'm really hesitant about the 100,000 in capital, only because like, there's only so much we can budget with capital, and I just feel like, year to year, we should try to max out as much as we can on it. To the 2% now, right? Is there, I'm sure you've already done this, but is there anything else like swap the 100,000? Like, I like the 3.93. I would just really prefer to keep the 100,000 for capital. So I don't know if there's like anything else.
I mean, we can take reductions of $100,000 and just arbitrarily say 20,000 will be in supplies, 20,000 in field trips, transportation. And then potentially have to charge parents for field trips, transportation. So there are areas that we can just like, I'm not gonna go through and say, well, if we cut 10 pencils at Brewster, like that.
No. Yeah.
What I'm saying is if we take an overall reduction in certain line items, we'll have to figure out how best we can handle that.
I think that's a tough game to start playing, because then why don't we just say, all right, well, we'll just cut 4 million out of the budget and be at 0%.
Because it's a zero-based budget, so we budget what we need. And then on top of that, when I first started in the district, I looked back in previous 5 years and I wanted to see if everybody always spent all their funds, and they didn't in their supplies. So I go right off the top and I take 10%, 15% right off the top of the supply budget before it even comes to the board, because I know they're not going to spend it all. And if they do have a need to spend it all, another school may not, so it balances out. So that's a practice we've been doing right along. So that's already built in there. So.
Yeah, Bob Gambino also asked for us to not fund salaries fully. You want to just go over that, why we did it this year?
Years ago, again, was one of my first few years. The board had a healthier fund balance, around $2 million. And it was decided at the board level at that time, we would build in a deficit in our salaries so that we could use that money and give it back to the taxpayers. So we budgeted knowing we were going to overexpend our salaries, right? And it was a budgeting strategy that was not going to be viable forever. We did that. And then now we've had to transfer money over from our completed capital projects to cover that deficit. So that's not a strategy that's going to get us anywhere again. Do you have staff turnover? Absolutely. But if you've got a staff member out who's getting sick leave and you have a substitute, you're not saving money. You're paying 2 people now. So, if you don't fill a big position for a couple of months, yeah, there could be a savings there. But there's so many factors. I think it's too risky to do that, especially since we had to transfer that money over from the capital project.
I think what Bob was saying, Bob Martino, not Bob Moore. He was saying that he thought the subline was too high if you're budgeting at 100% of staff. But my mind went to, well, yeah, you're going to budget 100%, but just because someone calls out sick or vacation, you're still paying them for their PTO, and you have to pay a sub. So that's the reason I assumed the subline would still remain stagnant, if not an increase. And we also have a problem getting subs historically, not like it's new this year. And I think most districts have that problem, to be fair. So.
I just want to say this is my first budget year from this side of the table, so this is kind of all new to me, but I think the budget that the team came up with was good, all things considered. Personally, I'm not really in favor of cutting anything. I know that's probably not what we're here to do, but I just feel like anything that we cut is a reduction in a service. So the library media specialist, I know that we talked about that a lot, but I think that's indicative of a bigger issue where we have these 0.5 roles and we're sharing teachers. And honestly, it doesn't really work out. You know, I don't think that's beneficial to the students. To go back to the feedback, excluding the feedback about the naming because that's not really relevant to the budget. I think we had a couple comments, you know, that came in that I saw that were questioning the budget, but overall, things were positive. I had talked to a few friends and, you know, there was questions about the positions we were cutting and if those should be put back. So that to me indicates that there's money to be put into the budget where we're cutting too much. And, you know, we always assume that when the budget doesn't pass that we need to cut more, which makes sense in some aspects, but we never really know, I guess, like why people vote unless they contact us and say, I specifically didn't vote because whatever, it's too high. I don't feel good about taking the capital money out. I feel like that's robbing Peter to not pay Paul because it's, if I understand it correctly, if we put the money in capital and don't use it, it's still there. So it's not money that we're losing. We know we're going to need to spend it at some point on chiller fluid or whatever other capital expenses we need. And that to me just feels like creative accounting where we're just trying to get to a number, kind of like what Kim mentioned with using the fund balance to make the numbers look good. And I feel like that we're at a point, and I know the town, both Durham and Middlefield are at a point where we're going to have to make really hard decisions based on years and years of, I don't want to say bad decisions, but other decisions that were made, and we're going to be having to pay the consequences of those. And I just don't feel good about cutting more and more and more, especially when we're looking at only a 5% increase, when, you know, everything that we compared to was at least that or higher. And I'm sure every town budget is going to come in at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%. So I feel good about the budget. I don't really know what else to add. I do want to comment on Jamie's comment about the tax rate and pricing seniors out. I mean, I understand that, but that, I don't know, I don't feel like that's kind of appropriate to talk about because we don't set the tax rate. It's part of the budget. We all feel the same thing, and that issue, I feel for it, but that's a bigger societal issue of affordable housing and stuff that we could get into, but I don't know. Need to be
I was simply commenting on why the budget may have went down. So it's nothing about putting people against each other.
No, I get it, but
Can I just say something?
why people don't vote.
Well, and I can just say that for years, it's always about the money. It's always about affording, being able to live in the two towns and still have a great school district. I mean, that's always what is the battle. So I'd have to disagree with you. I think it's always very obvious that when our budget is voted down, it's because it's too high. There's a direct correlation always. So I think going back with the same budget or the same number is just setting up for failure again. I'd have to say I don't agree with touching the capital reserve at all. I don't think this is the year for that. I think we put ourselves in a really bad spot when we do that. with that said, I do unfortunately think that it's not the year for the library media specialist. So I do think that's definitely a major thing that needs to be taken from the budget. I'm not in favor at all of cutting from line items like supplies and then starting to charge students when I think the bigger issue, and I've mentioned this, and I don't know if it's been brought up and re-looked at, but I'd like to hear that number again if we were to cut the library media specialist and then also keeping it down to just one director of curriculum. Lucy in the beginning had mentioned and Linda, the expertise of our many coaches in the district. And I feel that, you know, going along the line of utilizing and using all of this expertise, I think that we could make a really good decision by keeping the one director of curriculum in the budget and then using those coaches to work in collaboration with that one really good director of curriculum. I think knowing that we are downsizing and getting smaller and smaller, that we just can't justify two directors of curriculum. So Kim, can you tell us the number again for if we were to cut the library media specialist and also one director of curriculum?
Correct. So if it's the associate director of curriculum and one line, the library media, it would be a 3.74 gross and a 3.56 net.
I do want to clarify for people, we are not proposing two directors. There is in the budget, there's a director and an associate director.
Okay, so one of those positions. So the associate director is the position I'm referring to. And it's a 3.74?
Correct. And then
Okay.
3.56.
And we don't have to touch any student funds or anything by just cutting those two positions?
Correct. Those are the only two adjustments I built in. Yes. With
Okay,
your question.
thank you.
But they do affect students though. You see that.
Well,
Just one-
oh, sorry, go ahead, Bob.
No, my comment on the coaches is, I think I said it at the last time, is several years ago, around 2016, we saw that our student achievement was way down. It was one of the lower ones in our DIRC at the time. And the board got together and said, we want to raise it, and we set goals to raise it up. And we did it and superintendent at the time said we have to get teachers better ready, and they brought in coaches to get the teachers, more agreed. And within 2 years, we were at the top of the DIRC, top 2 or 3. After COVID, we have not recovered quite as well. Our ELI is up a little bit. It's gone down. Both of them, that and math went down, but the math hasn't rebounded. And I think, that's 2020. That's 5 years we haven't been able to rebound. And I think the coaches we have new ELI requirements and new math requirements from the state that are in place that we haven't, we're beginning to implement. And I think those coaches are necessary for a while anyway to get teachers ready with the new requirements. And it worked the last time. I think it'll work again if they're focused on getting us to the new standards.
Yeah, I think one of the problems with the instructional coaches is I don't think everybody understands what they do and how much they do. And so sometimes, like for people who are not in the education world, we try and put it in some business terms. And so it's an extremely common position in business. It just has different names. So these names in business, you might see like production manager, quality control officer, implementation specialist, those kind of things. Controller, if you're in the finance world, they do that same kind of level of oversight. And it's just it's probably for a lot of us, like when I was in school, we didn't have instructional coaches as far as I know. So it might be new, like looking back, but it's a very common level of position, very needed position in terms of efficiency, compliance, increasing quality, making sure that there's audits of data and instruction and, all of the new things coming down from the state.
I think most importantly though, is like just going back to one of the comments a little bit before that you made, is that we do recognize it is, you know, it is a piece of our budget and it is costly. But given where we are with our curriculum and where our students are with testing, we need that right now, and hopefully bringing in a new director of curriculum and kind of like doing like a level setting. It's something we can look at in like another year or two. So we do recognize that, and we're recognizing like, okay, we're making a commitment to look at it in years to come.
In the future, it's just, there's too much work. It's not the right time to do it, in my opinion.
A couple of things, we have to vote on Wednesday on a new budget. If we're gonna change it, we need to have our final recommendation out. My guess is that we will get down under 4% increase.
If we don't touch the capital, where does it bring you to?
If it's just the library media
It's
specialist.
just the library media specialist. What is
four.
that?
It's 416 and 4 even.
So you really need like, what, like maybe like 50, 60 to get it under to get it under 4?
Yeah.
Cause I'd love for it to be under 4. I really don't want to touch. the capital.
75 will get us a 398.
Okay. So you need another 75.
There are some other options in capital that we can look at too. I think there are some bond funds left over, right?
Well,
Not really.
no, you can't use bond funds
Well, I
to.
mean, for some of the related work we can move out of.
We have 2 ADA projects that are very high priority, so like some of the HVAC grant formula will go to the ADA, and then the other one for the high school is totally locked into an ADA grant.
Fine. So 70,000 reduction would get you exactly at 4.
So I really want 71 or 72. I really want it under 4.
71, 391.
So we all, in addition to adopting the budget, we have to set the schedule for a referendum.
Yeah.
And
So Meg reached out to the towns today because, you know, the towns have to organize a whole other referendum. We gave them 2 possible dates. It would be a district annual meeting on May 27th with voting on the 28th. And then the other option was a district meeting the night of June 1st with voting on June 2nd. And both towns would prefer the June dates. That's the feedback that they gave us.
the June 2nd will be on a Tuesday.
Yes, I believe that's a Tuesday.
Any other comments on that?
Are we gonna know before Wednesday where you're thinking of taking the 70,000 from?
Yeah, we'll
Wait,
put out a proposal, you know, when we'll get everything together and bring it out. We'll send out email out with everything on it. And the impacts, okay?
I
No,
mean, no, that's, I wasn't.
We need some
proposing to
direction,
do
though.
that. I was just saying that's what you would need.
yeah,
to-
right.
Yeah.
and I think if we are doing that, like we'll need direction from the board about
Mhm.
where you want us to look at things.
Okay.
And Mark, you're basically all set with the budget as it is. Maura, you would like to get rid of two positions, one existing and one proposed. I think Sydney, you're willing to give up the library media specialist.
Not really, but yeah. Wait a year, we'll wait a year.
And Christine would like to not take out any money out of capital.
But I recognize it needs to be, I think being under 4 is more tolerable. So.
I mean, if
I know that a lot of you have to go to different meetings, so we will have a written proposal ready for the Wednesday meeting. Where we are. It will be lower if you want to talk to the Board of Finance tonight. Than it is now. It looks like with the grant, the net cost has gone down for the town.
It's actually not Board of Finance, it's our annual
You know,
budget, so we're adopting the budget tonight.
yeah,
So are you moving to public comment? Cause I just have a
yes,
question.
I started the public comment.
Did you have something?
I was just gonna say, if I was forced to make a choice, I would remove the library media specialist, but I know that doesn't, we're still at 4.16, which is an arbitrary, I feel like we're trying to get an arbitrary 4%. So, but I really don't feel comfortable taking any money out of the capital. I just feel like that's a recipe for
I
disaster.
think we just need to get even more creative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just,
Numbers are very creative.
A contingency for some, let's say something happens at Lyman or Brewster and there's no money in the capital, it would be a request to the towns then. Basically, we need to fund this. That's normally the process that would happen. Not that we've ever used it, to my knowledge, but.
Right, we could get an emergency loan to
Yeah.
up to a certain dollar amount, but Eric feels comfortable, I feel comfortable that we've got some money in case there's an emergency at Lyman or Brewster, which is why we felt kind of okay tapping into that. Just it's another year, but you know,
it's just been a
I
long
think we'll
road that
be
we've
okay.
kicked that can down, and
yeah.
as we're like,
Well, and you're right, because if you don't, so if it doesn't go to Brewster or Lyman, it can go somewhere else and happen, so.
Right.
And we already cut the capital from 2% to 1% this year.
right.
Yes.
I also am not in favor of touching the capital, but I also wanted to just play devil's advocate for a minute and maybe think about it. We could reverse what we're talking about. Like if we were to initially start, since we've talked about how there's been positions that are similar, but they've never, it's been there, the focus has changed a lot in the last couple of years as to what those roles were. But if we had someone who specifically came in already very experienced in as a director of curriculum, I wonder what it would be if we were to just hire the one person this year, and then next year, especially as we are finding that we have more to work with, and if we feel there is a need, then would be the time maybe to add an associate position as needed, but maybe give it a year to see if this actually would suffice to have the one director expertise, and then those coaches who are collaborating, which we've all agreed are very important for the district. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Maura.
Lucy, second that.
Lucy,
I'm agreeing with Maura. So first of all, I for the last several years we put 2% into the capital, and we've been very happy about maxing it out. And then this year we only put in 1%. Now we're talking about cutting another 100,000, and I'm not in favor of cutting that 100,000. As far as the library specialist, if we have to cut somewhere, that would probably be my first choice. And the curriculum coordinator, I'm kind of agreeing with the scenario that Maura has set out at this point.
thank you, Lucy. I would like to have public comment now.
I was more of a question. Kim, when you were talking earlier about the additional funding from the state, that is going to the town, though. I thought I heard you say it's not going to the town. Did I mishear you?
And maybe I misspoke, it is going to the town, but the
yeah.
towns have to spend it on educational purposes, so the towns have to get the money back to the district. There's also the Pequot, so there's 3 different streams. So there's the Pequot stays with the towns, that's not, has to do, you can lower your mill rate, whatever you do with that. But the supplemental and the temporary aid are not ECS, and while they go to the town, it has to be spent on approved educational expenditures.
Yeah, I think I think I just talked about this morning. We're putting it in the ECS line. I mean, I guess we're not calling it that, but that's where we're putting it. Is that not where we're putting it?
No, I didn't mean that. I'm just saying, the reason they questioned against that was because then they want to keep it separate from MBR. So if it's a one-time appropriation grant, it can't be added into MBR. So MBR is you have to budget.
But it's going into the state, the state funding line. I
But
guess we'll call
I'm
that.
afraid we're capturing that twice, though.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, all right, well, I'll just mention it to her when,
Okay.
but we are adopting.
This was new guidance as of Friday, just Friday, so Beth may not Because originally I had said to Beth it would be ECS.
She spoke to CCM and Joe DeLong and George Raphael at CCM on Friday. That's what she said.
Okay.
I just want to make sure we're doing this right because we're adopting it in, 10 minutes.
We spoke to Matt Ritter this morning.
Yeah.
Who was
Okay.
our
Who
counselor.
advised to put it in as a grant.
So
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
Any other?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Can we talk to
Just
the
say your name
social,
for the record.
can we talk to the Teresa Bless from Durham? Can we talk to the social worker for a minute? And did the grant come in for that, or is that still being funded through the budget?
It's still currently in the budget and we haven't had any additional information about the grant that I know of. Have you heard anything? Yeah.
So why wouldn't we be talking about waiting to fund that when we had the grant?
It's a competitive grant, so there's a chance that we wouldn't get it.
So we feel that because it was a funded grant and you brought it in because of the grant, you feel that it's important enough that you're gonna now take the hit for having it in, like you can't. Cause with the originally we were talking about it and we were saying that it, hopefully it will be funded, but that if it isn't, we probably wouldn't be bringing it into the budget. And then it that fizzled.
Well, and we're not bringing it fully back in. So what we had a lot of feedback about the need for mental health services for kids. And we agreed at the beginning that we didn't put that back in the budget because of the cliff effect, right? Because we don't want to establish like a pattern of doing that. We had a lot of feedback. That is something we got a lot of feedback on actually early on about the need for students' mental health. And so what we wound up doing is sort of meeting in the middle and we put back in a 0.4 FTE. So that's what's in the budget, not a whole full position, but then if we get the grant, that will cover it. But we didn't want to take the risk of not budgeting it because it is a competitive grant.
All right, so my only other thought is that I know I do agree that usually I would think that we know from talking to Bob how much he needs you to go down. I assume somebody's had that conversation because he's pretty forthright with his conversations about what he thinks will pass in Middlefield, and he's usually pretty well on. So I would suggest that we understand that number. But secondly, my other thought is that I don't always think it is cost. I agree it could be others, but you have to rally the troops. You got to get the parents out there to vote. And I've done this for 25 years now, and it's hard to get them out to vote. But that is the only way. If the parents truly believe that they're being impacted, they have to show up. And, that's your only other choice. And it comes down to that.
Very little
Doable.
media for us to do that lately. Unless we start working on social media,
And we're also very limited in what
we can do.
Even in social media in the past, the parents organization sent out flyers.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that went on in the past that, I can't tell you it happens now because I'm just a lay person in this town now and I don't see a lot of it, so.
This, like we lost the town times,
I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Is there any other public comment? I know Eileen did believe.
we can move.
Thank you for coming. Any comment online? Anybody?
if you're online and you have public comment, please raise your hand. And
The other person? Gina? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. We're out of a quorum, so we're done.
or Nick can second.
I'm gonna go to this meeting and give up my position.
Sorry, Maura.
Yeah, I'm giving up.
Oh.
Oh.
You had somebody replacing you?
She's off.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Happy to be here. Have a good night.